Welcome to the next episode of Gel Studios Live that, for various reasons, is not actually live. I am still hosting it for them. We're recording this one and we're going to be putting it up later. But Gel really wanted to go for something different. Obviously, I'm Chris Dawes from Visual PR that produces these shows, although I'm not producing. Jan's doing it brilliantly behind the camera at the moment. But I'm keeping this conversation going because there's two very important people I'm going to be speaking to, introducing the key people for today. We've got, obviously, Alicia Gorton, the designer from Gel Studios.
Yep.
I got that right, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. Because Alicia's been involved in a lot of this work that we're going to be talking about today. But the big star of the show, Dr. Rod Hebden. Great to have you on the other side, because of course we work where you're sat in this seat.
I know, it's a bit weird being sat in this seat. I quite like sitting over there.
I know.
Kind of being in control.
I'm in power now.
I'm worried what's coming now, whereas there I can just do what I like. So
I'm sure you will anyway. It's fine.
yeah, probably.
It's fine. Just from a different seat.
I'll cause trouble.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah.
Rod, obviously the reason we've got you on here is that you're one of their favourite clients with Festival of Tomorrow, which in basic terms is a science festival, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of evolved a huge amount.
Yeah.
I mean,
Seeing it grow is the best part.
Yeah, grow in a kind of partly planned, partly quite organic sort of way, really. What we've done 5 years now, and yeah, so it is a science festival, but it's wider than that. It is science and art, and it's kind of everything really. And I guess, you know, to kind of get straight into the brand really. I very deliberately, when I first set up, didn't want to call it Swindon Science Festival for a lot of reasons. You know, I'm proud to be in Swindon. I'm proud it's in Swindon, and I love science. But actually, sticking Swindon in the title like that felt like it would make it feel parochial, that it's just about Swindon, rather than being something bigger. And relevant to a wider audience and to the world. It's not just about the science happening in Swindon.
No.
It's about everything. And similarly, if you put science in the title, you end up getting people coming to it who are already interested in science. And that's kind of not the point.
Yeah.
So if you call it a science festival, the people who come, they already watch Brian Cox on TV. They're already kind of people who think, yeah, I love physics, or I love this, or, you know, if you're a kid, it's someone who likes science in school. And the point of the festival was not that. It's about just talking about the world, and, you know, science and research and the arts, they kind of permeate everything. And so, you know, our first festival was just before the pandemic hit, and the pandemic period was kind of is a bonkers time to be growing a festival, frankly. But you know, did it anyway.
You like a challenge.
I like a challenge, but also it was like watching science communication, kind of, you know. In action, as we kind of had this whole, we're going to follow the science, or the science says this, now the science says that, and as the science of what we knew about coronavirus grew and changed, and you saw the messaging change, other people reacted to it change, and you couldn't get a better example of how the practice of science, not like, you know, what you're taught in school of, you know, things that you know, but the practice of science is just relevant to everything. And relevant to daily lives. And so yeah, I think, you know, we talked about coronavirus, we talked about all sorts of things. AI comes up, you know, and people get interested in these areas from different reasons. And only a small proportion of the people we want to talk to are interested because they like science.
Yeah.
And so the Festival Tomorrow, the name really was trying to, quite hard task, is kind of capture the essence of what it's about without saying the word Swindon, or without saying the word science.
Yeah.
But it kind of seemed to do it because it's really about, you know, we're talking about what is the future you want, you know, and our role as the festival is not to tell, you know, have scientists just tell them stuff. This is the clever things we know. It's about going, what is the future that we want as society, or what people want in Swindon,
and how can you be part of
how
that?
can you be part of it?
Yeah.
This is what we know and what we don't know. This is what the technologies, opportunities are available to us at the moment. What do you want? And it's a bit of a create your own future based on this is the cool stuff you know you can get engaged in, you can have a say in, and you can, you know, we can dictate the future that we want and help shape the future.
Yes.
So that's kind of where the title came from.
Which I can really relate to, if I'm honest, because obviously as part of this, I've also been working with you and Jel on your podcast and video podcast, Sculpting Tomorrow. Is that the right title?
I mean, the title was created by AI. Yeah.
There you go.
You could have taken that secret to your grave in that one. But I like it. And the reason being is that you also wanted to make that to be a standalone entity as well as a part of Festival Tomorrow. And the reason why I'm referencing that, and we may come on to that show in a bit more detail shortly, but is that I sit on producing that for you, with you interviewing your special guests of different areas of science. And I probably haven't touched science since school days. Not deliberately, just circumstantially. And I've been engrossed in every conversation. So for you to call it Festival of Tomorrow, to stop people from making a knee-jerk reaction, thinking they know whether they want to go and see it or not, it makes sense from that show experience.
Good. Yeah, I mean, it's a science. Is you're either into science or you're not into science. Is kind of how it is, you know. And it's a switch off people who aren't. And actually, the content is stuff that they are interested in.
100%.
So let's talk about the issues and the content, and the stuff people care about. And science is part of that. Not be kind of ramming the kind of science kind of thing.
Agreed.
So yeah, hopefully it kind of does make sense. And we talked about this before. I've got. Science in schools, I think teachers do an incredible job, but they've got such a hard job to do because the syllabus is so rigid and they have to learn a certain the things that even when you get to doing experiments in school, they're not really experiments because the teacher knows what the answers are at the end and you've got to do the experiment such that you get the right answer. Yes. And if you get the wrong answer, you've done it wrong. And that's not how science works at all. It's about exploring what you don't know and then finding out what happens.
Purely down to safety, I think, at the end of it.
It's safety, but it's also the fact that they have to demonstrate in your exam that you've learnt this experiment and you know what happens when you mix this with this, what happens. And I compare it to with sport. It's a bit like, if you've got a kid who wants to play football, and they go join a club and they start training, and at the weekend they get to play the games, right? They get to play football. In science in school, you basically spend the first 20 years of your science never doing any science. All you're doing is learning about science. In school, it's like you're on the training field, just dribbling around cones. You're learning to pass. You're learning the rules. You're learning this, but you never actually do any science. You're just still on the training pitch for the entire school period, and even university. I ended up doing a physics degree for absolutely no good reason at all. I was not interested actually in doing that. I think I did a physics degree. I wanted to do something else, and then I got into I was meant to do medicine, and then but I wasn't interested in the subjects I was doing at school really, and I kind of scraped not quite the grades I needed. Got into university through clearing, doing a random course I didn't care about. And then I switched after my first year, and I switched to physics because whilst it wasn't particularly interesting to me, I found I was quite good at it. So I thought, well, physics wasn't so hard at A-level. I'll do physics, and there's a year in France. So there's like a 4-year course, and one of the years in France. So that's why I took the subject. And I kind of just, did the bare minimum I needed to do to get through my degree, Wow. And I think I only became interested in science. I then did a PhD in engineering. I did a master's in science communication. Somewhere in there, I read a book by Bill Bryson, Short History of Nearly Everything.
Yeah.
And in it, he's not a scientist. He's got no scientific background, but he just starts talking about people and the stuff they were interested in and the things they discovered. And it's just a story about people being interested in the world. And I found it an absolute page turner, and I kind of cover to cover, laughed all the way through, loved it. And it was only when I'd read that book, I became interested in science. Wow. And I already had a 2-1 in physics at that point. And I'd not really, got any interest in science until that point.
But doesn't that highlight, for me, that highlights why it's so important, the likes of the Festival of Tomorrow, the festival itself, is that we never know what is going to spark our own interest, let alone the interest of each individual people. You probably guessed from the way I say it, is sat in producing your Sculpting Tomorrow shows has made me go, oh my God, this is amazing. And so it's those shows that have made me go, I'm really enthralled in this, and I could sit listening to this forever. And at the festivals, they get the experience of the people, the things that are on show. I mean, what was the one show we did where it was dance meets science?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then the show happened. I'm like, I get it. That is incredible.
Yeah, and I have no background or interest in contemporary dance till my eldest sister was a dancer actually, but yeah, and it's but it was taking a completely different angle, and so we and they came to me, Neon Dance, and they kind of said, oh, we work with Bristol Robotics Lab. I was like, oh, okay, let's see what that is, and then they'd produced this show, and so we essentially put that as part of the festival, and then they said, we've got this other thing we do and it's got gesture control. And I literally got no idea what you're talking about, but you seem really interesting. So let's do it. And yeah, it's just fascinating because it takes, she's got no science background, but she's interested in the body and how it works. And that is linked with robotics. And everyone's got different jumping off points. Yeah. And I've got kids, and what I discovered with them is there's no point telling them what to be interested in. Mm-hmm. No. And so my eldest, just an example, I knew he was musical. You could just tell, got really good ear and rhythm, all stuff. I just knew he was musical. He's mathematical as well, which tends to help with music. And so I got him guitar lessons, and he did not practice. He was not interested, and bought the guitar, and he was getting nowhere, just a waste of money. And then he was a bit older. I was working at Cheltenham festivals, and I took him to the Cheltenham Jazz Festival, gave him a VIP pass, and he could wander around and stuff, and he got quite excited by it all. And then we had so Jamie Cullum was playing, and we got tickets in to watch Jamie Cullum. Yeah. And he's someone who loves what he does. He's such a performer. Yeah. As well as the music is good, but he just loves it. And we came out of that, and my son was just buzzing. He went home, went online, taught himself to read music, taught himself to play keyboard, and then picked up the guitar, taught himself guitar, and suddenly was playing about 5 different musical instruments. Yeah. And self-taught. And it's just, so I kind of, with kids, I just decided it's not about teaching them or ramming anything, it's basically expose them to different things.
Absolutely.
See what excites them. Mm-hmm. And so I think what I try and do with the festival is just expose people to lots of different stuff.
100%. I'm a big believer in that. It's like even down to, say, sports, for example. I think that, well, not even just sports, whether it's sports, whether it's arts, whether it's something, all of us are amazing at something, but we don't know in advance what the heck it is.
You've got to have a go. You've got to
exactly.
Give it a go. You've got to see it. You've got to take part.
Correct, which is one of the things my daughter's now in the first year of secondary school, and I was really excited about her going there because she's like a sponge. She just does everything, takes it all in. And it's great, whether it's all of those different subjects being done properly, if you will, expanded on, shall we say, all of the different sports. And suddenly she's liking sports that I wasn't expecting her to, because it's great these days because it's opened up. Girls aren't forced into girls' sports anymore, is it? It's a lot more open, which is brilliant. So she's trying all this stuff. And it's the same philosophy, isn't it? Expose them to as much as possible and see what sticks, what excites them. Yeah, that's the kind of the aim I've taken, and so make it really broad, and just about families want to come and have a fun day. Yeah. And so we do have some of the stuff which is about for more engaged audiences, where we get deep into some of the science and some of the real cutting edge stuff, and we do some of that. We do a lot of where it's really kind of just come and meet and come and see cool things. Yes. And they'll come for, often families come because there's a really cool show which just sounds like it's going to be big explosions, or if you remember Rude Science, where it's just it was gross, and people
love that.
Exactly, the kids love that. So parents come thinking, I'll bring my kids, it's a free fun day out, they'll have a laugh, and they come thinking they've booked a show that's going to last an hour. They then stay for 2 days because they just then go around with exhibitors.
Do they really?
Yeah, so we have people literally going, we arrived for a 1 hour show this morning, we have not left, and we're coming back tomorrow. That's brilliant. Because the kids are just so engrossed in all these different exhibitors that they weren't expecting to see, and meeting real, I kind of talked about in the sculpting tomorrow about meeting the real people who do these things. Yeah. And it sounds a bit cliche, but you have this idea of researchers, you know, they get interviewed and they have to be all on, you know, on message, and they all sound like boffins, and you know, and they're just people who kind of ended up doing this thing that they quite like or quite good at, and so getting to meet real scientists, real researchers that are just relatable, and the festival, I call it scope creep. We just grow every year, and it nearly kills me every year. And every year I go, I don't think I want to do that again. And then you have these. I was in town in the Swindon hub. It's a brilliant community-run space. That I know you've done some work for as well. And I bumped into someone. I was talking about the festival and some plans, and he introduced me to this dad who was in there that was just visiting. And he said, "Oh yeah, this is Rod. He runs the festival tomorrow." He goes, "Oh yeah, I brought my daughter to that, and she said I didn't know girls could do science."
Oh.
I'm like, oh. And it kind of hits you, and you just constantly find I'm bumping into people, and the festival means so much to them.
Absolutely.
And it's had such an impact. And every time I go, I have to do this again now, aren't I?
It feels that next year.
It reminds you why you did it.
It feels important.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of keeps me going, and it's and it is that kind of, it hits people emotionally, and it inspires them, and who knows what they'll do. And they might become scientists, researchers, brilliant. They might not, but at least they'll. And not even at least, it's equally important that people who don't do research and science understand what it is and how it works.
Impacts everyday life, really.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and appreciate and respect the work that's going in, the news that we hear about stuff, is that you get a greater framing of it, I think, as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like general science literacy, you kind of call it really. But so, you know, you have this idea that science is like an absolute thing, and you're taught certain facts. And then when you see things like the pandemic or other things, and scientists not knowing stuff, and it's very easy, and you see it with climate change and all sorts of, you know, nonsense conspiracy things where they say evolution is just a theory. Okay, that's just a misunderstanding of what a theory is in scientific context, you know, and we don't know lots of stuff about climate change. Well, yeah, because every time you learn something, it's like when you think of, you know, you heard of the term the missing link, you know, in evolutionary terms, and you're thinking from apes to humans, there's a missing link, and then they'll find this skeleton somewhere. Oh, it's the missing link between this one and this one. Well, you know what you've done? You just create 2 new gaps.
Yeah, you've just moved it along a bit.
Either side of that. And so suddenly scientists have now got 2 gaps they don't know anything about. And then they find those, and now you've got 4 gaps, you know, and that's how the research works. Like, the more we know, the more questions we ask. And so, the more we know about climate change, the more questions we have, and the more we don't understand. And, you know, and people talk about, oh, well, there's 80% of the universe, we don't know what it is. So scientists don't know anything. It's like, do you know the amount of knowledge you have to get to even ask the question?
Yes.
Of what is dark matter and what is dark energy. So it's kind of getting away from this idea that science is this linear series of facts to going, actually, no, it's exploring about understanding more and more and more. And it's about, you know,
Evolving.
and it's about evolving. And so when scientists say, we don't know this, we don't know that, or we know it, they'll rarely say they're certain, because certainty almost doesn't exist if you're open-minded, and science is about being open-minded and going, well, you know, does this sofa exist? Well, I'll tell you, I'm pretty confident this sofa doesn't exist. A scientist will tell you, well, I will tell you that my eyes are, you know, are telling me there's something here, and my brain recognises that as a sofa. Do I know that sofa exists? No, I don't. You know.
Wow.
So when a scientist say they don't know things with 100% certainty, that's what they mean.
Yes.
So do we know climate change is real, man-made and urgent? Yes, we do. Will scientists tell you it's 100%? No, because they won't tell you this sofa is 100%.
Right.
So it's and there's degrees of uncertainty about the pandemic, for example, and we got better and better and knew more and more, and we could, you know. Yeah. At first it was all about wash your hands. Then they were like, oh, it turns out it doesn't live very well on surfaces. The mask is more important. Whereas at the beginning we thought the mask was less important. Yeah. And the more we know, the more we say. And if the public think that's about scientists don't know anything, or they're just guessing, or they're wrong, it's like, actually, no, we're just finding out more.
Well, it's the age-old thing, isn't it? We don't know what we don't know.
No.
Until it suddenly slaps you in the face. And
so you can choose to just go, okay, well, let's live in ignorance, or we can try and find out. And it's about trying to find out. Yeah. And so the arts and science is an interesting kind of mix, really. And yeah, I mean, Alicia's creative designer, and we have this kind of thing about in school of scientists know things, and artists are creative.
Yeah, we don't really cross paths at school.
You don't cross paths.
Just like, yeah.
And it's seen as two different, almost species of human who do the two different things. And actually, in school, you're learning things, but actually, when you get into doing science and research, they're the most creative people you know, because they're asking big questions and thinking of new ways of doing things. Everything you do in science, in the real world, is creative.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a lot more rigor to arts and design, you know.
Rules and structures.
There's rules, there's structures.
Yeah.
I get told off by you if I do things wrong. But, you know, actually it's Pantone, da-da-da-da-da-da. And actually there's...
Keeping some consistency is important when it comes to the brand. So,
yeah,
I mean, there is, I guess there's a bit more freedom when it comes to science. Maybe from a experimental side, you've got to continue doing things, continue learning, like... Yeah.
Whereas you follow rules. There's kind of things you do, things that work, things that don't work. You know, you don't just go, what should I do for this poster for the festival? I don't know. I'll start with a blank page and colour it in and see what I get.
To see, yeah. No, that's an interesting take on it. I never really thought of it like that. But yeah, there is a lot of structure and rules and things. Although we aren't afraid to break out of that. Like there is definitely case for that on near enough everything I do. But yeah, there are
within limits.
Yeah, there's some sort of bound. We just expand that box a bit further and sort of, you know.
Well, you think when we were also spending time, and you suddenly came up with, you know, like the psychology of a colour, for example, that was going to have an effect. And so there is that creative element that is vital to it. But as you say, Rod, is that there is hence the guideline documents that exist. Is that you've got to go? No, you've still got to stick to that.
There are things you know and things that are
Yeah, I like that. I've never really thought about it like that. You don't really think about it, like, you know.
So science is freer.
Ask the question.
Well,
science is freer than people try to make out, and creativity is more structured.
Definitely.
The two have to coexist. Yeah.
And I think so. If you give a kid a piece of paper and something, they'll be creative artistically, and you need them. That's why they enjoy it, because they can be creative. And I think we shoot ourselves in the foot a bit in science and how we teach it, because we don't bring in creativity in science and research until you've done your degree and you're doing your actual research. Until then, for the most part, you're just learning the psychology of the colour or what goes with what. You're learning the rules. So it's really nice bringing them together and bringing our artists into the festival and going work with these scientists and see what you can make of it.
Yeah, I think I saw a bit of that with the robotics project where they were asked, I think a couple of schools, the children were asked to draw a robot of the future. What would they like their robot to do? Like, and we was photographing some of their work and things, and just seeing children different take on robots, and it was really fascinating. It just reminded me of some things that I used to do and think about, like just seeing like how their minds work and what they expect the future to look like, or what they want these things to do. It was really fascinating, just really cool to sort of sit there and read their work whilst I was sort of supposed to be photographing it, but I was having a bit of a look and a bit of a read through it. It's really cool. And again, that's sort of children, that's art as well, because they were drawing, they were being creative, but then also from a science perspective. So it was nice to see the merge of the two.
Yeah. And it's almost it's becoming distinguishable in some ways when you get to things like ChatGPT, AI art. Is that science? Is that art? Is it any good?
There's arguments about that. Like,
there's a whole podcast on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like, you know, and with the writing as well, it's a creative thing. But now AI is writing stuff. Where's the creative?
Draw the line?
And yeah, so I think it's an artificial separation that we've created quite recently in our history between science and the arts. And people talk about Renaissance man, Leonardo, and Da Vinci. He did both. Wow, he did both. Everyone did both. Yeah. You know, they're all doing both. We've just chunked it up in syllabuses, and also from a utilitarian point, you know, we kind of factories and. You know, we've kind of done a bit of that, and so it's quite nice throwing a book all in, and we have, and it's partly because I think want to do that. Partly, here in Swindon, we've got UK Research and Innovation,
Yep.
who are their headquarters is here, and they essentially are the funding body for pretty much all science and research in the country. So £8 billion of funding goes through them, and they fund, so Research England is that, but they fund, research and PhDs and all this stuff that's going on in universities, and they fund companies to do innovation. So at that end, and they are, for administrative purposes, they're cut up into different councils. So the Medical Research Council, the Engineering and Physical Science Research Council, there's a bunch of them. But one of them is the Arts and Humanities Research Council.
Oh.
There's Economic and Social Research Council. So it's I'm not even sure you'd call it a spectrum, but it's all research, and the people in Arts and Humanities aren't just giving out grants for people to do some colouring in. It's a lot of rigour and research into that. Someone said to me at one festival, well, where is the arts in the festival? Mm-hmm. And they'd just been in a planetarium watching a show about space, about the Hubble Space Telescope and the amazing images coming from space. But that show was created by graphic designers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's arts and creative that went into that.
So yeah, it's all, and the soundtrack and everything else, it was all done by creatives.
You're talking about art as well. I have no idea if you had this in your mind to come up a little bit later, but I want to draw people's attention to this, that hopefully you can see on the camera. This was done live at one of the shows with your colours.
Yeah, so we did, it was the first year we got Arts Council funding. And so arts had been in there naturally anyway. But then with the Arts Council, who'd they'd seen it, they'd be quite keen to fund us. But it does make you think a bit more proactively about how you bring the arts in and make it more explicit, which is a good thing. But one of the things we did, we worked with two artists, the one visual artist, Harry Deering, and a guy, Gary, who composes music. And so live during the festival for 2 days, he was live composing music while she was live painting.
Right.
And they kind of feed off each other. And this was all happening in front of the public who were kind of there. And so she created 2 big pieces of artwork, which she kept, although we've got the digital copies. And then this kind of smaller piece, which we got to keep for the festival office. And yeah, I didn't give her any brief really at all, but she chose for this one to use the brand colours, including the lovely blue, which Alicia added.
Yeah.
In terms of, I just think it's gorgeous. And yeah, we've started putting up mugs. Merch may be available eventually, if I ever get around to that. But no, it is kind of stunning, and I love kind of having behind me in Zoom calls. What it means, I don't.
Conversation starter, that is.
I don't know. Do you remember that festival? Do you have any thoughts on what she was getting at with that? It's pretty abstract.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody could take a look at that and come back with a different outcome from it.
Yes.
A different perspective. Like I said earlier, sort of, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like the use of the gold and some of the symbols and things near the top, like I said to you earlier, sort of remind me of Egyptian hieroglyphs. And then sort of some of the curves and the shapes and sort of the grid pattern, sort of Fibonacci sequence, which again is very science. Like, and then you mentioned obviously was it the moon or the sun that you had? You had the sun, wasn't it? So that's got to be.
It's got to be a reference to the sun.
It's got to be. I mean, like the centre piece. Yeah,
I kind of, in my head, I think, I've got to assume that she was kind of drawing on the fact that we had this amazing sun installation that year, which was a 4K moving. It was using real images from NASA satellites orbiting the sun.
Oh, okay.
And it was then 4K projected on this 6-meter diameter sphere. It looks gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And then I just see the little dots as being people.
People all around.
Whether they're being inspired and that's why they're glowing, or they are just inspiring people, I don't know. But yeah, and I don't know what the arrows are. I mean, it's kind of, but you'd have to ask Harry, but I think you just take anything you like from it.
Exactly, as you said, Alicia, it's that freedom that 10 people could be stood in front of it and they'd all have their own take on it. And I think that's the beauty of art. I mean, but then there's the interesting distinction that I'm starting to question it since I've met you. But was that, that was the beauty of art, is that you take it whichever way you want, whereas science, you can't necessarily do that, surely, because it might be creative in what they're doing and what they're trying to find out, what they're trying to achieve, but there's not necessarily a take on it of what those results are. It still is exact, the results and things like that.
Yeah,
I know we're getting very deep into this.
No, it's good. And yeah, I think there's this kind of, you talk about modernist thought where you start getting, everyone's very, we were very kind of science and technology driven, in the kind of 50s, and, it was all about advancement and, and we were going to go to space and we're going to do all these things, and it was all technology will save us and be, wonderful, and all the sci-fi films that kind of came out of that. And then people got a bit sick of that, and a little bit disillusioned, I think, when things, because stuff happened, and there's Chernobyl and all these sorts of things, and suddenly start people to doubt science and that being the answer, not taking it as a kind of, I think we got to a kind of very top-down approach to science. Science is all knowledgeable, and it's going to tell you people things. Yeah. And it will be,
Pandemic was very much
positive.
that, I think.
There's
bringing that to the forefront was probably the most we've almost had science, not forced upon us, but
daily.
It was daily.
Explicitly
and
in the conversation, yeah.
That as well, I think, obviously the way it panned out and the situations that arose from it, I think left people feeling very sort of negative about science and things, and sort of, so I think the need for the festival afterwards.
Was it a realisation, and you've touched on this already, is that suddenly you go, okay, so the scientists don't know it all, which is what you're saying, is that even the scientists don't say they know it all.
I think there's that misconception as well, and I think that almost highlighted it, and sort of...
Yeah, I think there's, I think we kind of went from that modern kind of thought to the kind of postmodern, we all have our own truth, and all truths are equal. And then that's kind of not really got us very far either, because it's like, well, some things are just true. Some things are just real.
It's either on or off. Yeah.
You can. The Earth is not flat. You can believe it if you like, but it's nonsense. But feel free.
Yeah.
But and so you're right. There's some things that they're true or they're not. They're facts or they're not. To the degree that the sofa is real. So I think there's a bit of that. So scientists do and people are human, aren't they? So scientists are human, and so you always have that. That's the limit, But essentially, what you're doing is trying to be unemotional and about this is what the data is telling me, and this is what that data is telling me, and you have to interpret it because the data doesn't tell you the answer. The data gives you clues to work out what the answer is,
and the next sign.
So you have to interpret it, and then you go, okay, what does that mean? If that's what it means, how am I going to test if I'm right about what that means? So it's that constant search for, but you're getting a better and better picture of reality. It's rare that you do get it. So where science has thought a certain thing, and to some extent it gets sort of overturned because you get a better understanding. But it tends to be like a different model of looking at things. But there's been things like so when the concept of the Big Bang Theory, came along, that was originally a derogatory term. Yeah. That was a scientist going, what a load of nonsense, and referred to it as the Big Bang Theory. Yes. And obviously, there wasn't any noise. It wasn't really a bang. It wasn't an actual explosion. But that was a shift in, we kind of had an idea of how the universe worked, and suddenly we've got a new idea that the universe wasn't always there. It actually came from a point and expanded, and that was a new thing, and all the scientists thought one thing, and actually this has fundamentally changed the way we understand it. And what you don't do in science is throw away all that knowledge you had before and that data, because that data is still right. It's actually, we can interpret it differently now, and we've got, but always open, and that's the big difference, is scientists are always open to data that says, actually Big Bang Theory is not the right model. It doesn't quite work. Actually, it's an up and down thing that happens, or it's and it's about that being openness to new data changing how you think about things. And, you know, plate tectonics was a big one, which people thought was nonsense at first, and, you know, and people had to demonstrate it. But it's that weight of evidence, because scientists, like, you know, this idea that, you know, people like, you know, if you want to dismiss something, you go, oh, it's a big conspiracy, blah, blah, they're just, scientists are not that cooperative. You know, if climate change wasn't real, I can tell you for sure, scientists would not be around the world agreeing with it, because you would make the best name for yourself in the world if you were the one to demonstrate the evidence that it wasn't.
True.
You know, so, you know, the idea that they'd all fall in line is just not how scientists work, because you would be the most famous person in the world, you know, if you were to, you know, and so, and it is that constant question, constantly being open, you know, and people are human, and so, you know, and they always have to check themselves, but, and there's checks and balances, but yeah, so I think it's the openness is the thing, and that's where the creativity comes in. Nothing is certain. There's always an opportunity to go, actually, it's not quite right.
Well, I kind of, sorry, Alicia, I was going to say is that I'm almost seeing this now as that science is creativity to get to an exact result that we might not know yet, whereas the creativity is that you follow the regimented to get to a creative outcome. It's kind of on its head. You know, like, I don't know, take music. It is accepted that you play an A, it is an A that's happening. If you then choose to be creative with them, of mix them into a different order, you've now created something that no one else has in terms of that riff or that whatever it might be. If it's, you know, from your side, the design is that, look, I've got these rules that I've got to stick to that says, you know, these are the fonts, these are the colours, but I still need to create something that's going to conjure with people's minds. So you go the other way, rules to come up with creative to come out with factual results.
Yeah. And
that's how I'm now seeing it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of not a bad way to look at it. And then, you know, music, you know, then you go, these are the rules, these ones we work behind, this is how classical music works. Then someone decides to mess with the rules. Yeah. And they get jazz, you know. And it's like, but they didn't get jazz by not knowing and understanding the rules and just hitting the keys. They got to jazz by knowing the rules and breaking them in very specific ways.
Asking those big questions.
Asking the big questions.
What happens if I do this?
Yeah. What happens if I do this?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's where it's creativity and the knowledge and rules kind of come together.
Which, turning it slightly then towards the GL Studios involvement with the Festival of Tomorrow. Rod feels you're going to be under pressure now with that.
Oh, yeah.
But it was that you had to embrace what the Festival of Tomorrow was, what it was trying to achieve, and bring that to life. They arrived, as in you arrived to jail with
your logo and sort of base assets, I would say.
Yeah.
And we built upon them and sort of collated them into sort of one centre source that you could then use across the brand as this festival grows, across other materials, assets, and for other people to sort of shout about the festival. It's sort of just creating that one centre point and documenting that almost. So you had your brand guidelines, and then sort of using those rules that we'd put together in that book, but then seeing how we could be creative with those rules and then use them to build and create the, you know, further assets, branded materials, whatever that may be.
Which I know you guys loved. I saw the social posts from you guys, not only loving the festival, but with so much pride seeing the stuff that you'd created there.
That's the best part. I mean, I see it and work on it on a screen, on a flat visual, but having a physical piece, having it printed, seeing it, being able to go out and touch the feather flag, touch the banners, the catalogue stand. I think I went around the outlet at the time and I saw them. I purposely went there and was photographing them, be like, I worked on that. And it's the pure excitement of that. Like you can't beat it. And then to actually see people then interacting with that thing, picking up the event planner from the catalogue stand, like standing in front of the banners, taking photos or doing videos,
doing selfies in front of the branding. It's lovely, isn't it?
Exactly. You can't beat that. And the excitement that brings is you can't beat it. I love that part of it.
And it's great, surely, Rod, for you to hear that pride that they take in that as well, because it can be easy as the client to forget that part, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I always think I'm probably quite a bad client. But it's ironic, the thing of you kind of were talking about, because, you know, I guess we came to you, you know, we'd had another, it's kind of some people we knew, little agency that doesn't exist now, but they'd originally come up with the name, and then they'd evolved it a bit, and then create the logo, and given us the kind of first, the 2 colours and this sort of stuff.
Which we love, like that logo. When you came to us, I could see instantly what we could sort of expand and build with that. I think what was interesting though, we kind of got there almost a bit organically. So we'd kind of, how have you been using this? Oh, and you'd ask me, what fonts are you using? I've been using this here, I've been using that there, and this used to work there. So almost I'd been creative to get there. And what you did was actually, no, we need structure and rules. So the creative person, so the science guy was like being creative. The creative person was like, no, we need rules around this, and creative band guidelines for consistency, because otherwise you're going to look a mess. And what I was doing was rapidly becoming messy. And what you did was like go, actually, there's some great stuff in here, but let's funnel it down and sort of make it more. I mean, there's still,
and it's much more powerful.
Yeah, I mean, you can still be creative with the elements that we have. Just because we added a bit of structure around it doesn't take that creativity away from it. It was more for a consistency and to give the festival that look and that feel, and wherever it's seen, somebody instantly sees that and goes, yes, I know those guys. That black and yellow, that is such a iconic part of the brand. I mean, it's made it into the artwork, I was a bit of classical, a bit of jazz, a bit of rock, and a bit of reggae. And you went, no, you need to choose what you are. Work out the rules. To some point,
Play within
that the people visiting, so people understand who it is you guys are and what it is you're trying to do. I mean, if you started, you're known for the black and yellow now and added in the pop of blue, but I mean, if we started using pink and green and orange, it is, who are you? Like, you're losing that identity. And so I think we had to build on that, put some structure around it, and then from that, bring the creative elements and see what else we could take from it. I mean, even from the logo with the sort of the cutouts through them, some of the angles, we've introduced that across other assets. And, again, it's that subtle nod. It might not be that we've plastered the logo on everything, but because we've used that angle, because we've used that sort of the stripe or the split, it's sort of still a nod to it, and it's just building and building. And
feels like, it's the identity, isn't it? It feels like it's an identity. And so that's been really nice, and I've really enjoyed working with you on that, and me just going, here's some bonkers ideas, and you going, okay,
let's work with that and see what we could do.
And it is just so much more powerful, and then seeing it come together, and when it started, it was me doing some stuff, and I've done a bit of lots of things, and so I can get away with a bit of this, bit of that. But there's some bits I was terrified of. Creating a leaflet and designing that, it's going to look awful. And then in the first year, colleague Louise saw that I was doing this festival and went, Rod, you're doing a crazy thing, do you want some help? And so she joined in, and so between us, and she was doing the deck, and we kind of divvied up and grew it. But still, we knew though, there's bits that we were like, we're doing these things, but we're just not experts at it. There's people who can do better job than we can, and it can be quicker and better if they do it. And so kind of coming to you with our bonkers things, and you going, actually,
take that idea and work on it and create it into an actual physical thing. That's all it needs to start with, is an idea, and we can run with that. Yeah. Comparing the stuff that we produced, with our skills, even with the same brand colours. You have to start somewhere, though. You have to start somewhere. Yeah. So I mean, to where we've got to, it's just lovely to see it. And like you say, it is that bit when you it's probably my background for the on Spotify for the podcast. A load of the stuff got delivered, a load of the branding got delivered this year, and we unpacked it to see what it looked like. And then I just started, basically in our little office, just put this up, had the mug, and I was just surrounded in all the branding. And just kind of just swimming in it. It was lovely. And it's just amazing kind of seeing together in that sense, just it's quite exciting. But then when you see it, like say out and about, and the public engaging with it, and kids getting excited seeing it, and some of it, stuff kind of predating kind of Gel's involved. And this T-shirt, which is produced again by this guy Matt, who created the logo, and he just did this quickly for us in the first year, and create this kind of Welcome to Tomorrow thing on the front and things on the back, and it's just a lovely little iconic piece from that first year. But there was in the second year of the festival, no, it wasn't the second year. Second year we were online.
third year of the festival, so just coming out of pandemic, this family came in, and this little kid came in wearing the T-shirt from the first year of the festival.
Oh, wow.
So proudly.
Yeah.
You know, so excited to show me, go and show the festival director you're wearing the T-shirt from the first year.
Wow.
And it's just so nice to see how it resonates with people.
The excitement and the pride.
Yeah, and I get, you know, I mean, the Arts Council, you know, big funder, and, you know, one of the directors who I'd known previously from other lives, you know, saw him at some meeting and he said, I've been following it online, it looks brilliant, you know, and people refer to the branding looks brilliant, and, you know, we're, you know, me and Lou are kind of sort of two-person band, surrounded by lots of partners and people to help, but there's just two of us in the middle of it. But when you look at the collateral and you look at the website and you look at the branding, people assume we're a massive organisation.
Yes.
And it's great when people ask about, you know, speak to the people in your team, and I go, well, what now?
Me and me and what army?
Send this to your such and such department. Like, yeah, that's still me.
Yeah.
And send this to your finance team. Yeah, that's me. But you just it takes something that could look really small and amateur. And amateur, I say in a kind of not necessarily a negative word. Amateur just means you love it. You're doing it for the love of it, and we do love it. But it turns it into something that looks and feels professional, and takes the things otherwise is lovely, but a bit shonky, into something that looks the business, and actually presents what we're doing so much better than if we're doing it ourselves.
And I think as well that then helps when you are trying to get sponsors and partners and things like that, having that sort of collated brand identity. It's sort of like you said, it's almost making you bigger than what you actually are. But it's then building that credibility and that trust, and then people are wanting to get involved because it looks amazing. Like we want to be part of this.
Yeah.
So I think that's also sort of the importance of why we sort of, you know, built that brand identity and sort of worked with it and expanded it.
Yeah, that can't be overstated. I think, you know, it just looks professional, it looks quality, and sponsors and exhibitors want to get involved because it looks like it's going to be professional and quality. And also sponsors, particularly, my brand's going to be on that. You know, we have James Dowson Foundation, we have Intel, we have other people whose logos are going to be on this. You know, and they're protective of that, and they want to have the logo on something that looks good. Absolutely. And they want to be able to show it to their bosses and that's the stuff, and go, this is a thing our logo's on. And so to have something that, you know, looks professional is massively important.
Well, I know that Gel have been enjoying watching this grow because we've had many a conversation about this. I mean, what does the future hold for it? I mean, I know we've already touched on that just after it, you're exhausted going, I don't think I can do it again. But you then get reminded of just the impact and how successful it is. I mean, is there plans for it to be anywhere in addition to Swindon, for example?
A lot of people suggest this, whether we go to multi-site and that sort of thing. There's no one answer. I think you know, we're open-minded as scientists to what the future could hold. I think when I first started, I always joked, you know, 5-year plan was to take over the world, and so and again that's part of my, you know, the branding of it. But I think there's two key aims. I mean, you can break this down in much more detail, but Swindon is a place that I live in, I love, I brought my kids up here, and I think is an amazing place. But it's got some real needs, you know, in terms of access to education, in terms of skills, in terms of, you know, its brand, its perception of the place, all these sorts of things. And you know, and you want to build that kind of sense of place and that people are proud in it, and also give opportunities to people in the town. And I don't talk about raising aspirations with young people. I prefer to talk about broadening them.
Yep.
Because it's about exposing to new opportunities, new things you could do. You know, a lot of kids, you know, they grow up wanting to be football players, you know, and play in the Premiership. That's a pretty high aspiration. I'm not going to give them aspirations much higher than that, really. No. You know, but I can broaden them because they're not all going to turn out to be Premiership footballers. And actually, they might end up working for the space agency, or they might end up discovering this tech, or working on this, or doing, you know. So it's just about going, you know, here's some other stuff you could consider. And people tend to not do the things that they, you know, you have to see a thing to even put it into your
exists. Like, I
that it
didn't know
exists.
that was a thing.
I didn't know that was a thing, you know. So, you know, just to even consider it, like a consideration funnel. And so we're basically going, here's this other cool stuff. Do what you like with it, but here's other cool stuff. And so part of my, you know, my motivation, the passion of why we do it is for that local audience. It's actually, here's this stuff for them.
Yeah.
So that is a big part of what we do, and that's about in Swindon, right? And then there's a bit of showing off that to the rest of the world. So people coming to Swindon going, wow, look at this cool thing that happens in Swindon. But there is a kind of then, okay, if we're going, this stuff, Swindon's important. It's important to Swindon, but Swindon's important to the world. And having things like UK Rhino, things here, you know, the UK is, you know, that kind of birthplace of industrial revolution. You know, we're one of the world leaders in science to tech, and UK Rhino is that kind of key part of that for the UK. Well, the Swindons are the core of that. We're significant to the world in science and research.
Yep.
And so we want to give Swindon a voice in that. So when we look at that kind of more engaged audience, where I talk about we go deeper into the science in the smaller events, but also go online, I'd love to build those to have a broader reach and feel like they are kind of almost thought leadershipy areas where people all over the world are engaging with this kind of the latest thing, but Swindon being at the heart of that. So it's like a mini science research Davos, you know. And you know, people talk about whether we franchise it or create a festival of tomorrow kind of thing where it can have little pop-up things in different parts of the country. Maybe. I'm not going to go and run them all. That's a bonkers idea. I mean, even too bonkers for us. I love to look at something where we take that online thing and make that international, and actually partner with people all over the world to create something that's running with multi-venues that are kind of running this non-stop content. You know, that might be, you know, go from Swindon to New York to, you know, and go around the world. I think I don't know what it will look like. We'll probably keep growing it because we do that. But at the heart of it is kind of understanding why we're doing it. And often people say to me, and you know, the why comes into brand, doesn't it? People often say to me, have you getting these big names? And I'll name some big science names. Are you getting them in? You know? And I generally go, I wouldn't say no, but they're not my target. Having a big science name in the room for my local audience is like, what all that will do is I'll get booked up by people who already like science because they know that science name.
Because they're going for them, yeah.
So the Brian Cox example, you know, maybe we'll have Brian Cox one day, but it's not the target, because if I get Brian Cox, people who already watch Brian Cox will buy all the tickets, and that will reach no new people. And so it's knowing that what I'm trying to do with that audience is important, and then trying to know what I'm trying to do for and with Swindon, with the international audience is important. So it's a bit like, you know, we talk about research in, you know, we were talking before the podcast, weren't we, about vehicles, whether it should be electric or hybrid or whatever else. And you don't tell scientists what technologies to develop, you tell them what the problem is to solve.
Yes.
And so I think as long as, and the festival's evolved because of other partners coming with their ideas as much as it has from me and Lou, as long as we're clear with partners about what we're trying to achieve, let's see what the solution is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It might grow in many ways, but the point is not to grow to make more money or to high ticket numbers, or, you know, that's the aim is those kind of two elements, and how we will achieve that. The solution might well not come from me.
But you're still creating the nucleus for that freedom of what the future will hold. So I mean, that's it. So it's at the STEAM Museum in Swindon.
It's at many places. The first year we were in STEAM. The second year we were online. The third year we had the 2-day finale at the Deanery Academy, which will have a new name by next year.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because they've changed Academy Trust. So the main 2-day thing was there, which is an amazing venue. But we also did a few bits in libraries and in town and various others. And then the fourth year, we were again at the Deanery, the school, but we were also in STEAM all week. We were in the Brunel Centre, we were in libraries, we were in places. This last year, we were again in the school, we were in STEAM, we were in the Outlet Centre, again in the libraries, We had things across town. We had,
Lots of different things.
I can't lose track. We obviously had the dance performance at Swindon Dance.
We had Create Studios.
We had Create
I think,
Studios.
with
We had
stuff.
we had the film screening with the astronaut. We had a comedy night that was in another venue.
It's just growing. Yeah, I love it. It's just
So
expanded out.
and there isn't one big venue in Swindon anyway. Frankly, we couldn't. If we're growing it, we
It would
basically
limit you, wouldn't it?
we already has. We filled the venue.
Yeah.
The venue can't get more people in it.
Yeah.
And actually, getting back to that, why we're doing it, I'm not doing it so I can flog lots of tickets to get people to an event. I'm trying to reach people. And actually, by going to lots of different venues, doing lots of different types of formats,
Yeah.
so the dance performance will have got a whole different audience to the comedy night,
Yeah.
to the film screening, to the 2 days, and so that's kind of really where we see the growth.
Hence the importance of the website that obviously JL Studios created, is that becomes the epicenter to go, right, what's on where and when?
What's on where and when, and what is it about? Because, what are we? Are we a comedy thing? Or are we a dance thing? And we're all of those things. But the brand and the tone of voice and the visuals, it basically pulls it all together. And so it's kind of like, so I guess, in some ways, the festival team, me and Lou, our role is to hold the vision. But
share
actually,
that vision out and then get everybody else
yeah.
sharing that same vision with you.
Gel helps us
And how they work
articulate
on
it and communicate it visually and in other ways. And then it's kind of arms open. Okay, so what are we going to do with it next?
Hence you guys enjoy it so much. Because there is that freedom to it. What month of the year is it normally?
So we, February half term.
February. Yeah.
So
okay, yeah.
the 2-day finale is the Friday and Saturday. And we have then a lot of stuff around town, different venues throughout that week of half term.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't even mentioned, we also have a week of schools, a week or so of schools programme before that, which is about 7,000 kids get involved in.
Wow.
So yeah, it's basically February, but I mean, you can see us doing potentially things during the year. I mean, the podcast as an example, we might start doing some monthly events as well. But yeah, February is the core.
That's the crescendo, so to speak. So that makes sense. And I mean, you mentioned that we're doing the sculpting tomorrow. That sort of, as again by design, it was not an advertising tool for Festival of Tomorrow. That's being done elsewhere, but this was giving content that goes out on the Festival of Tomorrow's YouTube channel and podcast station. But it really goes into, as I've been loving finding out, going into details with experts in all these different fields, so that you're keeping the message going. And you're making it deliberately varied, aren't you, with the guests?
It is quite varied. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. And it's kind of, what's difficult, I find, with programming any of this stuff is, like, I've got a physics background, physics engineering. So that means I know very little about some other areas of science. Or, as a person, you have particular things you're interested in. And you have to program not for yourself always.
Absolutely.
And so trying to get that, and I'm naturally quite interested in most things.
And I've watched you getting interested in these conversations.
But it's things I don't know anything about. And so when I do the dance performance, that was not for me as an audience. I don't go to dance performances, you know. And yeah, I guess it's always going, okay, there's an audience over here. What are they interested in? What would be good to them?
Yeah.
And finding the things together. And I guess sculpting tomorrow is trying to, obviously there's a bit of, that might be interesting, that might be good. But also trying to get that variation of different people interested in different things. And all these people, it always turns out, it's basically, it almost doesn't matter what you're talking about. If the person you're talking to about it it's their world and they care about it, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because just finding out about what they're excited about. So I love it. And I do listen to them. I listen to our own podcasts. And I'm in interview mode, I'm interviewing them, but I listen to them on Spotify.
Oh, really?
And I find it fascinating.
And yet, again, you find out something new that you may know.
It's like I'm listening with new ears and I'm hearing new things.
Yeah.
And
Which is intriguing, because I've watched you doing it, obviously in the producer's chair, and I've watched you really engrossed in the conversation, because you are getting more and more enthused. The questions are relevant to what they've said. And yet, that still, as you're saying, is that we can only do so much at once. You absorb even more afterwards. Which is why that podcast is so useful, because they might have been to the shows or read and done other things, but get this conversation, the natural chat going about it, and it helps. So, great that's another thing that you're putting out there. I mean, for me, I know you guys have been enthralled all along and sort of introduced me to Rod, and I get it. The future hopefully is looking bigger and better as well, and there's still plenty of people yet to be exposed. Even if they've probably not seen it all yet.
Well, it's different every year. So yeah,
Right.
We've got new things. I mean, the exhibitors. So we obviously program new shows and that sort of stuff every year, but the exhibitors change. I mean, so the next podcast we're doing, filming tomorrow, is with Loughborough University on hydrogen. And they were a new exhibitor this year, and their exhibitor stand was brilliant this year.
Really?
So yeah, it's different. I mean, yeah, the variation. There was one year I found I had to buy a laser measure, laser pointer thing for measuring distance. Estate agents used one of those. And I found myself walking around Swindon measuring doors and entranceways to see what was big enough to get a mammoth inside, or the 6 metre sun. And then it's kind of random, or a solar car that had raced across, the students had used to race across Australia. It's just so weird and varied. And I think people generally enjoy a different thing to the thing they thought they were going for.
Absolutely.
My other son came for big shows, and then he'd seen the solar car as an exhibit and gone, oh, that's interesting, oh yeah. And then he came they did a talk, the students themselves did a talk about creating it. And he found that fact, he's like, he just couldn't believe these young people, not much older than him, as a little side project at university, had built this car from scratch, with the solar stuff. And then who drives this racing car to race car? And then the smallest, the sort of shortest female student said, yeah, that was me, because we need someone light.
Yeah.
And she'd driven this thing across Australia. He's like, that is just so cool. I want to do that. So yeah, I think people, you won't see it all. Like I say, people stay, even they just do the finale, they end up staying for 2 days and don't necessarily get around it all. But every year it's different. And every year, I give these the big challenge of, we're going to be doing some cool stuff. And they go, what is it? And I go, I don't know yet. It's going to be cool.
Work with it. You need to start creating something for that, and we'll put the information in there.
Yeah, can you start planning how we talk about this thing, but we don't know what it is yet.
But even when I guess that it's not about prescribing everything that's there.
No,
because you want people to explore and find it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some element of we give them particular information.
Yeah.
I mean, like the event planner and guide that we did this year, and even that obviously was changing up until like the day before, and that's what happens. Like, things are changing and evolving, and we've got to work with that. But there's like ways around it, work with the website and to update that instead and direct people there, and you just roll with it. And I think that's the joy of working with it and seeing it, because it is constantly evolving, and what else we can do to get that brand out there and help the audiences. What is it they're asking for? What is it they need? And again, similar with the website, that's constantly evolving, because we're getting feedback from people that are real life people that are booking these tickets and that are using the website, how they can see it working better or in a different way. And that's constantly, and something with the festival, everything that we do with it, branded assets, materials, will be constantly evolving with it to fit those needs.
I think it's that full range of, with kind of the marketing side, you kind of start with, you're promoting the brand, which is just kind of, it's getting the sense of who you are and what you're about. And then it's getting that in their head so people get a picture of, and they have their own picture, but essentially you're adding to, informing their picture of what you are and what you're all about, down to the essentially sales, of, okay, this is how you book your tickets. And I say sales, most of it's free, but it's about, the very functional stuff.
Yeah.
So what Gel kind of do is kind of help us go, this is how we do the brand, this is get the sense of it, this is how we put it all together, and then work together on, okay, and this is how we make sure the very specific, practical information goes out. But like I say, some of it does change. And we had, in those hybrid talks, so one year, we'd had, I guess it's been a couple of years ago, we had some people coming on who worked in robotics, and they worked with robots going into inhospitable environments. It might be drones things, it might be things like the robot dogs you might have seen around the Boston Dynamics type things. So they go into these difficult environments. It might be radioactive, or it might be, a disaster zone, all these sorts of things. And so they, but yeah, one of the places they were going into regularly was Chernobyl. And they came in, and they obviously the war had started, and they basically brought something, kind of slightly terrifying, but really interesting, real, this is the picture we've got over Chernobyl now of the radiation levels. And this picture is changing constantly. And it just did change constantly. We had, and we had some stuff about, Ukraine agriculture and the drones being used there at the moment this year. And it is that constantly changing feast. Volcanoes this year. Well, we had people who were literally in Iceland and working on, the eruptions that are going on there at the moment, which was a constantly changing picture. Mm-hmm. If you remember just a few years ago, all the airspace across the North Atlantic was shut down by the unpronounceable volcano. And so some of the stuff you can't really predict. We kind of go, we think this is going to be an interesting area. And then come February, something changes because we're dealing with real world, constant current events.
Science, isn't it?
It's not about just the history of science. Yeah. It's kind of, it's stuff that's happening and relevant to your daily life right now. And these guys just have to, that's one of the reasons why I think I'm a bad client, really. I'm just constantly full of, I'm quite demanding and also incredibly vague.
Yeah. You're demanding for something.
Yeah.
Then that gives us something to work with. That's where our place, then we come in and, well, how about this? Would this work for that? Can we develop this? That gives us the ability to start, putting those ideas out there. You might not have an idea yourself, but then we can come in with, well, maybe this could work. From experience, we know that to get people to this part of the website at this point, there's...
Yeah, I'm quite good at sometimes saying what I don't like and what's wrong.
And
then go, what I need. But in my head, it's like this, which is ridiculous. And then you go, okay, based on all the nonsense Rod's just said, here's some actual real solutions where we can...
If it makes you feel any better, Rod, I think we can confirm even I've sat in front of you with my business and they've gone, right, let's just pick some of those bits from that.
Make sense of what's in your going on.
It down into something that we can work with. And I mean, that's the creativity part of it. Like the ideas, the thinking behind it.
We did an interview with you, didn't we, where you have to sit there with people like us just going with everything that's going around in our head, which is great because it gives you that whole bit.
It's building a picture.
Exactly, and you're there either making notes or you in particular are already doodling and starting to come up with ideas.
Yeah.
Which I know Carly's the other way. She's like making notes ready to do anything afterwards, but you're already... taking bits of that, so hey.
The visual, I mean, just words down visually, what that means to me, or how that that comes across.
Portray it.
To the right audience, etc. I mean, everybody, designer works differently, but yeah, that's just my process. And
so I can relate there. You're not alone,
no
Rod.
client's a bad client, to be honest. Like, it's some people come with rigid idea. Exactly, I want these colours. I want it to look like this. That's great. All right, that puts us maybe slightly more in a box, and we've got those set of rules to work by. But we can still be creative with that. And others come to us with no clue what they want. They
just looked at me then. She didn't say Rod's not a bad client. She said no client's a bad client. No. It's like no question's a bad question when you just ask a bad
question. Like you just come into us with, this is what I do, this is my business, this is my service, this is what I'm trying to do. How can we get other people to feel that energy and relate to what I'm trying to do? That's what we do.
Don't you love seeing that then come to life, where you've just gone, but there's everything that's going on in my head, and then you suddenly see it brought to life.
See a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I always love that. I find that incredible. What is the web address?
Festivaltomorrow.com.
Simple as that.
Nice and simple.
Yeah.
And the social media accounts are generally actually, because you have to be shorter. Sometimes they're festive tomorrow. I think on Twitter and things, aren't they?
Sometimes you have to, and it depends if things like that have been taken already, so you've had to do different variations of it, might be fest of, or
Yeah, so we've got the podcasts, audio on Spotify, and they're on YouTube, the Sculpting Tomorrow ones.
But they are still under Festival Tomorrow's channels, aren't they? Which makes it logical sense there. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been amazing for me to sort of hear it from both, obviously, the GL Studio side. Obviously, it's GL Studios podcast for this one. But Dr. Rod Hebden, thank you so much. And you took to the other seat quite well this time,
you
I
did
think.
it really well.
Yeah.
Well, I have to sit. Actually, you get control there, but your job's mostly to shut up and listen. Whereas this way, I got to talk a lot.
You did.
So, you know.
I was thinking actually, going like, I've never heard Rod speak so much, because obviously I know when you're this person,
Yeah.
and you don't get to as much. So no, it was great. Thank you both so much for coming on and discussing all of this with us.